So, uh, both of my grandparents, both of my grandfathers were very toxic, and they were made that way. They weren't born that way, they were made that way. My white grandfather on my mother's side, he was a Navy veteran, severe alcoholic, started out running moonshine in Arkansas in the Ozark Mountains. My grandfather on my father's side was the son of slaves and probably forced to go to a horrible school, beaten, molested. Both of them were. Both of them were beaten and molested. And of course, they ended up drinking and smoking and doing whatever they could to soothe themselves, to feel better about themselves. And then, of course, you become chemically dependent on those medications, and they never got the help they needed because it just wasn't available. And it wasn't available because toxicity is exactly what these satanic oligarchs want. And the oligarchs, you have the new generation of oligarchs like, I don't know, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, but I'm talking about the old school rapists who came over on the boats in 1492 and slaughtered 100 million of my Native American people, enslaved the rest, and they abducted young teenage squaws, forced them to marry them. Pocahontas Pocahontas was a trafficking victim. She wasn't in love with Dave Smith, whoever the hell it was, some white man. That was rape. That was slavery. And slavery is basically brutalizing somebody to hoard resources, and that means sexual resources too. That means the poontang. Not all men, but back in the day, men were driven by their private parts, and it was all about controlling all the money so you can control all the women, and women are a sexual resource. Men need poontang more than they need water or food or anything else. Or at least that's how it was back then. But that was the culture that was created. Portia de Rossi wrote a book called The Unbearable Lightness, which is a play off of Kierkegaard's Unbearable Lightness of Being. And she basically blew the whistle many years ago about how child molesters run Hollywood and the ad industry and the modeling agencies. So, and how they use 13-year-old girls to model grown women's clothing because that's what they want men seeing, and then that's the standard that men have. And then all women have to be teeny tiny things. Grown women who've had children have to be the same size as a 13-year-old child. Because that's what pedos like. So we really got to start giving that lady credit at some point. So anyway, my father, because of that toxicity, my father, Native American father, he was autistic, probably didn't communicate well or connect well with others, because we don't. We can on some circumstances, but that has to be very accommodating and very educated circumstances. Well, his two sisters used to accuse him of doing stuff he didn't do and got him beaten. And then he got it in my grandfather's head he's a problem child, and I remember my grandfather broke his arm at the age of 7 for playing marbles on the floor. I guess the marbles would roll across the floor upstairs, and Grandpa was trying to sleep downstairs during the day because he worked at night, and he broke my father's arm. So, and that was just like the way Grandma told me the story. It was like That was perfectly normal and perfectly okay. That was the culture that they grew up in. But my father has a real issue with anybody lying on somebody and getting them in trouble for something they didn't do. That's a real huge pet peeve of his. And of course it is mine too. And that's what Brady violations is. You're accusing somebody of doing something they didn't do and trying to ruin their life and take away their civil. It isn't just about getting a spanking or a timeout or getting grounded as a kid or whatever your punishment would be as a kid. Now we're talking about grown-ups' lives. So in my mother's family, they did it too. They told on each other and got each other beaten and probably lied on each other. And my grandfather was a brutal, my mother's father was particularly brutal and probably sexually abusive as well. I remember he molested me. It wasn't anything real bad. He was too old and it wasn't anything like, it wasn't brutal. It was just grotesquely inappropriate. And he was drinking. And my Aunt Mary sided with him on that too. She always sides with the abuser, unless it's her kids. She did call out her husband when he was being when he was being abusive to her kids. But anybody else, she always sided with the abuser. So anyway, my mother still to this day accuses me of shit that I didn't do because she gets off on watching me get punished for shit I didn't do. I don't know what that dynamic is. I don't know why somebody would get off on that. She loves lynchings. And her relatives attended many lynchings. And it sure sounds like they still think that that's a perfectly okay thing to do. Well, my father didn't like spanking anybody. He didn't like having to discipline me because he prided himself on teaching us properly. If we misbehaved to the point that we had to be punished, that meant he failed. And we're talking about somebody who converts terrorists into assets. Somebody who knows how to teach and modify behavior very quickly. Sometimes gently, sometimes you have to be a little not so. But he saw it as so the more allegations Mom made, the more pissed he got. And he, would talk to me, and unfortunately I didn't understand what was going on, and Mom would threaten me. If you tell your dad, I'll do that, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but she's just a horrible monster, period. Very much like, she didn't stick her tongue in my mouth or anything like that. It was more like body shaming and toilet humor and all kinds of other disgusting stuff. Very much like Lauren Book's abuser. And eventually, Mom would lie about the whole situation. She told way more lies than she really needed to tell. And eventually, she'd lie about some situation. And later on, after I got in trouble, either got spanking or whatever my punishment was, I'd be talking to Mom about something. I'd say, well, here's the thing, the da-da-da-da-da-da, and she'd say, okay. And basically confess to something that I didn't even know she had lied to Dad about. Because she would go lie to Dad in private. She wouldn't let me hear what she was saying. And Dad would be like, wait a minute, she told me something totally different, and now she's then Dad started figuring it out. So eventually, when Mom would lie about something, Dad would say, Heather Janine, get in your room. And we'd go in my room or the garage or wherever. And he would pretend to yell at me and he'd be doing this. So he's basically saying, just go along with it. And then he would have me either write down what really happened, or he tried to do it in such a way that Mom couldn't hear what we were saying. And eventually he would get the truth out of me, but it wasn't going to. He couldn't convert her unless he could catch her in the act. So I would tell him what really happened, and then he would tell me later on what kind of conversation to have with her. She wouldn't know that I told him the truth. He would pretend to punish me. It was all a PsyOp. And then eventually he would say, do this, 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 and this, and then she's going to do this, and I'm going to catch her. And so this is part of my training. We've been doing this, we've been catching my mother and all of her relatives in a lot of lies for many years. And we're still doing it. My mother, her relatives, and all of their Epstein, child trafficking, drug trafficking partners in crime in Arkansas and Missouri that were running drugs with the Clintons, and all of the Iran-Contras, some bitches. Was Trump in Arkansas? No. Was Epstein in Arkansas? I don't know. My understanding is they were in New York or Washington laundering the money. Doesn't matter. They're still part of the same criminal, child, sex, and drug trafficking cartel that isn't just out on the street. It's in the hospitals. It's in the homeless shelters. It's out through all the government, social, and human services, the police departments, everywhere. So my point is, that's why I believe my father's assisting and advising them on how to run their investigation, because they're doing things exactly the way that he's been teaching me to do since I was little. When those two police officers came out to arrest me, they were by themselves. So, and they did that on purpose because they knew I was going to be upset, and justifiably so. And they knew they were going to do you're going to be all right. That's why he didn't do this, but he basically did the same thing my father did. Just calm down. We're just going to get you down there, get you processed, and you're going to be on your way. And they were trying to keep me calm so I would pay attention. They knew they were asking me questions about why all of a sudden they're like, you've clearly been here for many years. You're living under a structure. You've got a new structure. You got another one that's full of stuff. That didn't happen overnight. They could tell I'd been there for years. I told them I'd been there for many years. So they got to wonder, why all of a sudden am I being arrested for a no trespass now? They asked about auto. I told them about how the park ranger and these other people are mad because they got caught lying and saying that they worked for Bernie Sanders or Sarah George, or that the mayor sent them. And maybe they did go to the mayor and lie to her, and she let them think that they were, and Dad would do that. Dad would go along with Mom's lies because he needed to know where was she going?